Hello and welcome to another episode of Freemium Mode, the kind of show where we give you all kinds of news, insights, and information related to marketing and communications within the games industry. I'm your host, Max, and I'm an account director here at Big Games Machine, but all round just working with some amazing people talking about some brilliant and interesting topics. In this episode, it's going to be very timely because we're going to be talking about all things related to video game events. And given that we're running up to Gamescom, we've just had the Summer Games Fest. I think it's a perfect time to have this type of conversation. And with me is kind of our expert and person who's done tons of amazing stuff with these type of events is Amie. How are you doing, Amie?
Yeah, very well, thank you. It's really, really nice to be here. Peak event season, so I'm like, yeah, let's go. If you haven't booked your space, what are you doing at the moment? So
Exactly. I mean, I think that's going to be a big point of conversation throughout the whole of this show. Is going to be about the getting in early with it all. But no, it should be really useful. And I think whether we're talking about, I think we're mainly going to be talking about physical events because there's a lot more that goes into that. I think owned events where you can be on streaming or whatever has certain other challenges, but I think physical events bring their own kind of enjoyable moments with them as well. So that's where we're going to be focusing on for this show. So do kind of listen in. If you have any comments, any questions, just feel free to add. And thank you, Tamsin, for reminding us all on the chat as well to do that. So thank you there to our amazing social media expert, Tamsin, for doing that already. So to kick off with this, let's just start with a really basic question for your side, Amie. Is for people who might be new to the games industry, maybe they are a company that's just entering in from a less obvious direction. Maybe they are a marketing person that's come into the games industry, but not games industry person from the beginning of their career. What is kind of some of the things that you can advise and talk about? And in this case, this is one of the questions that we got in, why events matter within the games industry, what matters and what they should prioritize.
it's a very, very valid question. I mean, there are so many events these days. It's understandably very hard to pick and choose what's right for you. Am I going to get the return on investment that I'm looking for, whatever that looks like? But I think to start off with sort of two of the most calendar dominating events, GDC and Gamescom being two of those, they are for us, definitely in our industry, the ones that stand out the most. They are arguably two of the biggest, most highly attended, around the 300,000 people mark. And they're just the ones that are in the calendar. It's when a lot of the big game announcements take place, something else is announced. They fall very nicely, sort of the March, the beginning and the later end of the year. So in terms of their timing, their locations, what they're both about, those are the two, Gamescom and GDC, that I feel are the ones that arguably can matter the most, because in my opinion, I think when you go to big shows like that, you're kind of presented with this smorgasbord of possibilities that you could do, which is everything from sort of walking the show floor to a full-on booth build to something else. But I think it's also equally important that if you are a marketer or someone new to the industry, there are other events that I think are just as important to attend on a local level, or if you're close by. Pocket Gamer Connects is one that comes to mind, just because it is a very heavily attended event. It takes place in dozens of cities around the world. It's been going for years. It's a bit of a mix between B2B and B2C, but it's the mix of the size of the developers and publishers that are there that makes the difference between that versus GDC or Gamescom. You would arguably get a little bit more time or opportunities to talk to Pocket Gamer staff. If you're presenting or you've got a booth there, you've got opportunities to talk on a more B2B side of things and the networking side of things, and the ability to talk to consumers if they're there on the show floor. There are absolutely tons and tons and tons of different events that I hear sort of that are popping up. Another one that I found absolutely fascinating that I had no idea about, that I would love to go to, is called the Lucca Game Festival in Italy. and
okay.
they take over this square, and I think it gets like 500,000 attendees or something absolutely mad every single year, and it's just this open area for people to like present their games, and it's very heavily attended, but it's also very locally focused because a lot of these people will be from local businesses, for example. So I've given like a very sort of like big scale to like very sort of smallish scale, but I think it's worth looking into online events as well. That's something we could probably touch on a little bit later, Max, because we're getting in the weeds a bit there. But those are sort of like my top line. Those are the events that matter. Those are the ones that people talk about, and usually stay in the calendars sort of like 9 months or if even a year or longer ahead of time, I would say.
No, that's really true. I mean, I think that's, look, you're absolutely right. I think one point that you said there, which I'm really interested in, is about how there is that local element to some of those events as well. Like, if you're in the UK, there are certain events that are also on top of your calendar if you're in the games industry in the UK. But, if you're in the middle of Germany, or if you're any country in Europe, will have its own localized events that are just as important to go to for your business if you're operating there. Is that kind of also a key part, is just not just looking at the big ones that are bringing everyone from around the world, but the ones that are like on your doorstep?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say like something for the UK specifically is like Develop Brighton. That's probably a really good example. That is like slightly smaller scale, but it's still local, but it's still manageable for a lot of people. But I think the point is with all of these, whether they're big, small, local or international, it's a really, really good opportunity to talk to like-minded people and meet people in the same industry as you, because you don't get that chance. Like it's great as gamers that we've got ways to talk to each other, whether that's Discord or whatever, you're choosing to do that. This is like real FaceTime value. This is talking to people. This is really hearing, like what consumers are saying or what they're, it's feet on the ground kind of stuff, which I personally really like.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. And I think kind of ties nicely to our next question that we had come in. And I think I understood this, I felt this quite a bit coming from, being in a non-games background and then coming into the games industry. I think your perception of events is a bit different from my side. Events are great for networking, but they're a bit hit and miss in terms of the other opportunities. And I think it's plays slightly differently for the games industry. So I think this question here about like, are events purely for networking? What would you say to that, to someone asking that question?
I think events, for me, I think provide an opportunity to achieve quite a lot of goals actually, and it's I touched upon it earlier. Whether that's raising awareness of your game, whether that's setting up meetings with prospects, or like providing a physical glimpse of your game to consumers, whatever the case may be. No, they're not purely for networking, but my goodness, do you benefit from networking? I think of networking for me on like a consumer capacity, in the sense of me representing like the consumer side of a business. Networking for me is talking to the people that make the games, because I find that interesting, and also talking to some of the consumers that are walking the show floor. So that is interesting to me because I get insight into what they're interested in, what they're looking for, what's new, what's going to be trending this year, who's talking about what. So I think it's a massive networking opportunity, and it is on the whole, but I look at it as like there are little sort of like fun segments to it. But I think one of the really interesting things in terms of networking that people do, whether that's prospect building or whatever the case may be, GDC is prolific for this, and it's got a heavily sort of like networking focus, where all of the hotels outside of GDC or very close to GDC are known for these like business to business meetings and meeting new prospects and talking business, all those very sort of serious conversations. And that I think is fascinating in its own right. And I think it's really useful, and it's outside of the noise of the gamers, if you like.
Yeah.
It feels like where mum and dad are, and the kids are all like in the hall sort of playing the games type thing. but I think, yeah, some are more geared towards networking. That makes sense. If they've got a B2B capacity, yeah, then it is for networking. If you look at Gamescom, if you look at Gamescom specifically, that's a very consumer focused event. But interestingly, on the networking side, they brought in a B2B area not too long ago. So I think events are starting to grow up a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's not just about those conversations and meeting people on the show floor anymore. It's a bit more serious. There's a lot more competition. There's a lot of people that you want to get in front of. But yeah, I just think any event, yes, it is for networking, but you can do that in many, many different ways.
Yeah, I suppose it's also one of those things that ties to like how the games industry might operate from other sectors, and especially other tech sectors, where, you know, with these events, people come to it and everyone's there, you know, within a given radius, you know, whether it's a local events like a UK event, you know, pretty much all the key figures in the UK games industry will come to the same events. And so if you're not there, you're kind of missing out on those opportunities to find out what's going on and stuff like that. Whereas obviously other sectors, you won't always get that same congregation altogether. You might only get like a small percentage of it. So the value of networking is less, I guess, in those. Would you say?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Cool. Fantastic. Well, I think that's another thing, is that like when we think about events, you know, we think about kind of attendance and what things are doing. You see, especially if you go to Gamescom, you see these majorly impressive stands, that all these manner of ways that they're all designed and laid out. And that can be quite intimidating, I think. So I think that's another point of question, is that, you know, does a company, and to this question here, you know, does our company need a booth for an event? Can we just attend? Like, what would you say to kind of someone looking to see how do we engage with a particular event, and in what form does that take?
I think the FOMO, the fear of missing out, when you turn up to these events and you don't have a booth, everyone goes, "Oh my God, we should probably have a booth." But I've this year alone, I've seen so many good examples of like low budget or kind of like test the water type spending when it comes to like engaging with people who you want to talk to. I think if budgets are tight, you can be really, really clever with marketing. And I've also found that a lot of people are now like virtually attending these events. So like, for example, if there is zero budget or like zero permission to go to any events for like research, what some people do is they'll sign up to Meet to Match and do those meetings, Meet to Match is like what is one of the platforms used by Gamescom, GDC, etc., to set up meetings with other people. And that can be quite an effective way, especially if it's a distance thing, if it's a cost thing. You know, you're not really sure whether it's the year to sort of like dip our toe in the water, but we kind of want to start doing something. That's an option that I've seen people do over the past couple of years. But I think in terms of sort of like, you know, do you need a booth? I think it's always helpful if you've decided to go to an event that you have a location set out that's going to be good for meetings. So for example, it's like, right, I'm not going to have a stand, but I want to talk to people. Okay, where do I want to do that? Am I booking meeting spaces nearby, like at, you know, at offices and stuff like that? Am I going to use a hotel like I would at GDC? Yes, those things come with costs, but they don't necessarily come with the investment that a stand comes with, all the time, all the preparation, or all the planning. So I think a lot of people will choose those sort of like types of options, especially if budgets are tight, or there isn't the need at the moment to sort of really heavily lay it on. For example, if your game isn't ready this year and it's coming out in a couple of years' time, ask yourself the question, do I need a booth, or does it just look nice? Like, is it just got a cool TV? Do I just want cool cosplayers? Do I want people, you know, take a step back from the situation? And I think touching on, and I know we're going to likely touch upon this topic later, but one thing that I found incredibly impressive this year that I think if you're on a budget can be really, really effective. Well, it definitely worked on me. Crikey, I really enjoyed it. There was an animal charity that was handing out packs of what looked like Pokemon cards. And on these Pokemon cards were some of these animals up for adoption, or like how you can get involved with what their gaming arm of the animal charity is doing. And basically just taking something very cool, very clever, didn't really cost lots of money, and just walking the show floor and just introducing yourself to people and just handing out these little packs of cards. And I think things like that, for me, I hold on to and keep and remember, but it was just like a very effective way to get attention whilst not having a stand. It's got my contact details on it. It's got how you can talk to us. It's got what we do, etc. You can hand out marketing collaterals in that way and walk the show floor, and it can still just be just as effective. May not be as glitzy and glamorous as, you know, insert AAA title here and what Xbox is doing or whoever. Sometimes I think less is more, and can sometimes be a bit more endearing, because I think those types of things can also open up conversations, potentially with people that you can crikey, I've been to many events where I get stand fatigue, where I've just walked the floors for so long and everything kind of just starts to like blend into one after a couple of days. That could be due to lack of sleep. Haven't confirmed that yet. But it's just a bit more refreshing. It's something different. I remembered that encounter. It's a personal encounter. I haven't had to wait for 5 hours to talk to someone. I've just got what I've needed. You've told me about what you need to tell me about, and we move on. And then they've got the freedom to walk the show floor and continue that. So that example, I think, is a very good way of how you can be clever with getting the word out about what you're doing without having these like high budget, highly produced builds that can cost, you know, lots and lots of money.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I suppose also going back to the other thing you said about like meeting spaces, I think you can very easily forget that, you know, as big as these venues are, very few of them have communal meeting spaces or communal spaces where you can sit down, and often they're all either part of a group or part of something. So you end up very much needing that physical space. Whether that needs to be a full-blown booth is another thing, or anything. But it is interesting, you touched on the kind of animal charity, and I think, you know, in terms of kind of concerns and issues within the kind of climate within the market and stuff, I'd be interested to know, like, with people kind of looking at budgets, looking at like the landscape of the games industry at the moment, a big question I think is going to be on everyone's lips is, you know, should they be going to events, you know, in the current market climate, and if not, what should they be considering else as an alternative?
So again, it's a very fair question, and I would push that question back on anyone and say, well, what are you going, like, do you need to go? What are you going for? What do you want to get out of the event? That's, I think, the most important question that you need to ask yourself. I think, especially in this current in this current market, not everyone has the luxury nor the budget to do those kinds of things. But what I will say is that I think what has been really nice is the fact that a lot of events, minus E3, unfortunately, have bounced back pretty well, considering, you know, what the world was like a few years ago. And I think that a lot of people have missed going to these things and connecting with like-minded people. So when I think about, you know, if anyone were to ask me whether I should be going to an event in this current market, if you can afford to and you've got the permission to, even if it's just to walk the floor for like one day, or you get a consumer pass or whatever the case may be, just to kind of like test the waters to see if it's going to be good for you, I think that's a good thing to do. And it may even conjure up ideas for what you could be doing next year in a couple of years' time, and you could be really grateful and glad that you went, even though the investment was slightly more than what you anticipated. But yeah, going back to what I said at the start, ask yourself that question. I mean, if you want to be networking with people, if you need to raise money and you need to talk to investors or whoever it may be, then yeah, you probably should. Or even if you shouldn't, consider where those people will be throughout the year. And when I mean those people, like investors or, you know, potential partners, they're probably going to be there. So should you be there because you want to talk to them? Then yeah, probably. It's just it's sort of like thinking in the back of your mind, everyone is going to be out here on at this time. Should I go? Should I talk to these people? It's not often that you get that many people of the same sort of like, or like similar backgrounds in terms of the games industry all in one place that many times a year. So I would say yes, because the amount of stuff and people that I've met and seen at events is something that I could never ever encapsulate and then deliver back to someone exactly how I felt in that moment. So I think you really should experience them for yourself to get a feel, so that then you can go back and say, right, we've decided that, yeah, we are going to go to events, but Gamescom wasn't really for us, was a little bit pricey, or no, I didn't really rate it because it was too consumer focused. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at GDC then, test the waters. I don't think there's any harm in doing that, but I still think that our events are, even in this current market, are still a very, very important and interesting, fascinating things to attend and be part of.
No, I totally agree. And I suppose, depending on what your business is, I'm guessing that there'll be certain ways of you trying to find efficiencies within that. Like if you're, I don't know, like part of an institution, like you can go with a part of the national body for the games industry in your would that be another option if you are concerned about the cost associated with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That if anyone has been to an event before, especially in the games industry, you will have likely seen these country stands, or you'll have Brazil and Switzerland and Canada and whoever, like all with like their own sort of group of games like underneath them. And for a lot of those sort of like early stage and smaller companies, that is like a proper lifeline, because you start looking at costs for putting stands up and having it on your own. That's a very daunting thing, and not everyone's done that. And so then they have to go, right, so we need someone to come and project manage this. How the heck are we going to do this? And sometimes I think that umbrella provides a really good, not just a safety net, but an opportunity to still be a part of some of the best events, but with the support that I think they deserve and they need, especially as like newcomers, because they're not having to worry about necessarily all the stuff that goes with it. Yes, you can still have your own identity, but you're looked after by your country, if you like. And I think what's also really nice about that is that when you are kind of grouped together with your country, not only is it a fantastic showcase to just walk. I could just imagine Max walking over to you and saying, "Oh my goodness, have you seen what?" Switzerland, like you said, have you seen what Switzerland's been doing? This is amazing. And you just got this awesome cluster of games or services or people that are all operating underneath this. But again, not to keep going on about how great events are, but I think I think that kind of safety net and umbrella that those types of incubators or whoever provide are just fantastic lifelines. And I have seen in my career, people start on booths that are underneath, that umbrella country, and then branch out to be on their own because they've got the support and they've had the love from that incubator or body, whoever it may be, to be able to get to Gamescom or GDC, wherever it may be.
Completely agree. And I think, this is the next question actually about preparing for Gamescom specifically, but I think this would apply to any event, really, any big event. But I think it's an interesting one because it's about logistics and planning are a huge ordeal. And if you're a small team that you're primarily focused on making a game or delivering a certain product or service for the sector, like you might not have a dedicated marketing professional, you might be that person. Or you might need some external source of support. And actually, sometimes that comes with a huge cost. So, preparation can be helped by working with an industry body. But how else would you say, like for someone wanting to prepare for something like a big event in such as Gamescom level, what do they need to be considering at this, generally ahead of time?
I'm just ready to shout into the ether. Book early, book early. That's like the biggest thing. No, like in all seriousness, the one of the biggest problems that some people can face is when they decide they want to go to whichever event it is. They want to build a stand, like they need physical space, but it's too late, or like it's sort of like 2 or 3 months out. Now, I think in terms of the insight I can give on this, in terms of like a couple of events that I've sort of like worked on before, building booths, etc. There are, I think, GDC and Gamescom, as far as I'm aware, they prioritize the people that have booked with them the year before or have booked this year. So when Gamescom finished last year, before it even finished, I think they were sending out, do you want to exhibit at Gamescom next year? So they will always choose, their returning customers, and it makes sense. But also people could say, that's kind of unfair, because that then leaves less space for the rest of us. What am I supposed to do with that? Book early. You talk to, you look at your options, you reach out to the teams that are behind the projects themselves. So like the Colin Messe for Gamescom, for example, you can reach out and you have to go through the process anyway to book a stand. You will go through their website and you will say what you would like to do, and they will tell you what you can and can't do. But the space is so important, because that's the thing that goes so quickly. Everything else about how the stand's going to look can come later. You just need to have that rough idea of how big you want it to be. If you know the space, like the center or wherever it is, well enough, do you know where you want to be? Should I be in a B2B hall? Should I be in a consumer hall? Should I be near an indie stage? Like what, all of these considerations, I think it's worth looking at. Maps as well is like a really good indicator of going, right, next year I want to be over here. Granted, they may change, but at least it gives you like a, right, Gamescom, I want to be in the B2C section in hall 6. So you've already kind of done that background research, because either you saw something there that was really cool and effective, or it was like really near an entrance that everyone comes through, or is near whatever screen that broadcasts every announcement and trailer going. I think, booking early is like the main thing to get your right space, and doing the research, if you can, to see if you've got a preference, because the last thing you want is being chucked next to a column, or like in a really sad dark corner. Obviously, sometimes that's unavoidable. But that's kind of like one of the main things. But as well as that, if you're going again, and I just speaking on behalf of Gamescom here, book hotels early, book accommodation early, because there'll be a lot of places that offer like early bird specials. It's the same with like Gamescom and GDC. You can get early bird deals, early bird tickets, where packages are cheaper 9 months out than they are 6 months before. So there are more benefits of booking early than there are obviously of being late, because, well, you're left with not very much. So
I suppose it creates a vicious cycle as well, doesn't it? In terms of, if you will delay booking, then you book late, which means you pay more, which means it feels harder for the company to justify that spend, so that you wait again and then you book late again, and the cycle repeats itself. But going back to your earlier point of actually identifying what events matter, are we willing to do this, and just committing yourself to doing that, rather than thinking, like, rather than sitting on the fence. From what I'm getting, it's the sense of like, actually just accept, define these as important things that you do from day one, and ensure that it happens and is planned well in advance, so you don't have any of that stress.
Exactly. And in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, there will be clauses that, if you need to cancel, you can cancel, and there's no, there's nothing coming back on you. But it's I think going in early, keeping things early is really kind of like the main way to go. And as you said, like the cycle is just is just a vicious one. But yeah, that's
I think another point that kind of ties in to this, and so aside from the event side of it all, then we need to be kind of, you're not just, if you are doing a booth or if you are doing some kind of marketing activity, like you pointed out with the collectible cards for the animal charity, like I guess the question comes into play, like what kind of elements do I need to consider? Not just the physical space, but then what else do I need to consider when going to a games event? What other moving parts? Because I know from your experience, you've had to deal with multiple different parties doing various little elements that bring this booth to life. And what could those be, for example?
To go in with a super granular point here, only because the first thing that comes to mind is, firstly, is it in the right area? I know it sounds like a really obvious thing to say. Is it in the right area? If it is, fantastic. What do you want to do in that space? Have you got something that you want hanging from the ceiling? Do you want to be bringing in food and drink? Do you need extra space because the stand next door to you is going to be really loud and blaring music? Am I going to need like everything? Like, am I going to need carpet? Am I going to need more space? Do I need a storage room to put all this stuff in, like, to lock away overnight? That's very important to us. You also need to consider, I think, should you be working with like an external, like a production, like an experiences team, to help you bring this to life? Like, are you, serving food? If you are, do you need to hire people to do that for you? Like, do I need to be making, engaging marketing collaterals? Are they okay to take into Gamescom? Where do I get those delivered? Are they going to arrive on time? What if they don't arrive on time? Do I have a contact for the person at the Colin Messe again, to deliver these boxes of 50,000 t-shirts that I want to give away? They're like, it's all about making sure that everything that you want to try and achieve, that if that you've gone to the people running the show and being like, hey, is this okay? Like, checking to make sure things are okay with the organizers is one of like the biggest things that I would advise if you're ever unsure. People think there are ways of working around stuff, or they won't get in trouble, or like, oh no, I've paid all of this and they can't really say anything now because the stand's being put up or whatever. There are just all these kind of like little annoying, sometimes nuances that you have to think about, because if something goes wrong, you're going to need to talk to someone about it, and there are rules and regulations in place at places like this for a reason. And it's not just necessarily health and safety, but it's also to give, a fair play to everyone kind of around you as well. Like, just because they're Xbox, whoever, it doesn't mean that they can put things on the ceiling just because they've got tons of money. That's not how it flies, So I think if you've got a consideration or a concern of like, where does this go? How do I get this here? Can it be this tall? Can I have a screen like this? Can I have 6 people working on my stand? What time can I be there from? Where do I get my passes from? All of these elements you need to consider before going. Who's picking up badges? What entrance am I going in? Do I need to collect anyone from an entrance and bring them into the show? If I do, where are they going to be? How are they going to get there? If I've got meetings on the day, do they know where my stand is? Have I told them? Is it signposted effectively? There are so many sort of like early considerations just on the logistics part before you even get there, that, as I said, that one of the best pieces of advice is to ask the organizers. Even if you've got a contract that says like, yes, you can do this and yes, you can do that, there would be nothing worse than your investment turning up and they're like, actually, no, sorry, you're going to have to start de-rigging. Like, that would just be absolutely mortifying. So I spoke about some very specific things there, Max, and I've been trying to like draw myself back out.
No, I think it's really good. And I think, you pointed out a really key thing that, even these places are big. They're not small spaces. And while they can seem really easy to navigate when it's the day before the doors open and it's all quite empty and you know exactly where to go, it becomes an absolute maze when it's filled with thousands of people, cosplayers, production crews moving and recording stuff. There's one-way systems that they implement. So, like you said, these logistics become a huge thing. We've got a comment actually from Anthony here, and I think it's quite a light one to kind of break up the kind of like nitty gritty stuff. Is just what's the best thing we've ever seen at an industry event? I think Amy, you've been to quite a few now, so I'd love to get your thoughts on this. It might be something we have to like come back to and you get a little thought to, but I don't know if anything immediately springs to mind. Just one of the best things you've seen.
There are so many to choose. I'm also going to throw that question over to you, Max, after I've given my answer. Okay, so it's on you to think about this too. All right, you've got to think too.
Okay.
I'm a big Cult of Lamb fan, so when where did I go? God, I sound like I'm a broken record. But when I went to Gamescom last year, Devolver had the lamb walking around in their suit, just pulling by. And it just absolutely made my day, because when you're so into a game like that, like I am, where I think one of the phrases is like praise the lamb, you've got 50 people just surrounding this person in a suit of the lamb, just like bowing down. It's like the most normal thing on the planet. Do you know what I mean? And you just and you look at those moments and you think, oh my God, there are like thousands, if not millions of other people who know what this is, and they find it as amusing or as cool or whatever it is as I did. I was very bullshit. I didn't realize, in my defense, that there was like a queue of people around this lamb to take photos. So I just like wandered in and was like, I'm just going to take a photo. And I think, Max, you actually took my photo.
I took the photo. I've got it on my phone with the evidence, so that next time they tell you got to go back at the queue, I can say, look, you've already got a photo of them. No, that's such a lot. So go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and just like call it like an honorary mention, but went past the stand last year of someone dressed in the most intricate, insane cosplay that I think I've ever seen. She was like almost like a tree, that she blended in with the background. She was just sort of sitting with her arms and her like twiggy fingers, and I didn't notice anything. I just thought it was like a dummy, until she moved her head, and it just blew me away, like the level of detail and work and dedication that people put into like their cosplay or their costumes, like at events like this, and what's achievable. It's just creative and beautiful, I think, and I envy, in a good way, people that can do things like that. So yeah, it's your turn, Max. What have you?
Oh, my turn is very I think it's going to be quite pretentious, but I think I could talk about, there's some amazing stands. I think you get when I got blown away when I just saw how much of the space Xbox took over last year, just the sheer scale of it. Same with Netflix. Netflix did a really impressive job with their stand in this boxed space where each corner was a different TV show, and you had Wednesday and Squid Game, and it was great.
Yeah,
they were handing out Squid Game biscuit things with the symbols on. But I think the thing that genuinely, on a lot of a smaller way, but I think it just shows what games industry events do and how different they are from any other sector, even sectors that are consumer sectors, is that working with someone last year, we were at a big event and they didn't really know what the event was going to be like. They hadn't really come from a games industry background, and we had to guide them to our booth because, as I said, it's a huge space, and even though it was easy to get to the night before, they knew where it was the night before. They got lost, and we had to take them to the booth, and it looked like this person had just been in an accident. Their eyes were wide, and just I didn't realize how mental this was. I didn't realize how popular this was. I didn't realize how big a deal this was. And you've got all the other people around him who all come from the games industry, just nodding along like, yeah, it's Gamescom, come on. But to see that switch flip in someone's head and make them realize this is a big deal, and is a really impressive feeling to know the power of the games industry. So yeah, not necessarily anything cool or special in that way. I could talk about the giant Little Nightmares 2 baby statue. That was quite scary, but no, that's probably the one that comes to my mind. Thank you so much, Anthony, for that. If any more comments come in, do post them. We're happy to answer. But going back to our kind of pre-stacked questions that we've gathered from our kind of client base and conversations, I think a really good one here is about merch. Is it worth producing merch? And this is a really big conversation, actually. It goes into a lot of other issues, I think, that we could talk about. But what would you say to that question there, Amy?
Firstly, I'm really glad you can't see my background, because I take a lot of things away from events. That's the first thing I'll take away from this conversation. Secondly, in all seriousness, though, again, it's merch is an investment, right? And why should you do it? Should you be doing it? What do you want to do it for? Is it a brand awareness thing? Do you just want to produce some cool stuff for people to take away? Do you care what they take away? Again, it's ask yourself, who's going to want it? What are they going to do with it afterwards? Is it going to be useful? I feel like we've really moved past the times of pens and a USB stick and just a really generic my soul just sank when I thought about those. Sorry, because they're just generic. They're very useful, but just very generic. Yeah, is it worth it? Is it worth producing these types of things, especially now? One of the things that I've noticed when working on merchandise recently is that people are caring, this is a good thing, more and more about the environment. So a lot of companies are now looking at merchandise are going, do we really need to produce 50,000 plastic pens? Do we really need to do all these things? Again, it's a question, do I need to be? Well, no, I could probably potentially do something a lot more interesting, or I say less invasive, but loads of people love to collect stickers, for example. They're super low budget to produce. They're usually characters from their game. People love collecting them, and they're just a really nice way for people to come and engage with your stand, for example. So very small, very easily accessible, pin badges and little collectible things like that, people absolutely love at the moment. If you're going for a slightly classier affair, you can look into doing merchandise for sort of either your sort of C-suite members if you're having big meetings, or if you're trying to impress someone particularly, you can look at things small batches of branded, it could be power banks, or refillable water bottles, or it's who you're doing it for, who's going to care, and is it going to be worth it? I just, the concept of I remember feeling there was a stand, I won't say who it is, but there was a stand last year that were given away, and you could tell they were, and this is what made it a problem, they're current year's worth of t-shirts, from previous events. And it's kind of just I can tell A, that it's from the year before. B, I can tell they've been in a box for at least a year, if not longer than that. And it's just kind of a bit, you then have to think, right, I'm what if I do have all of these things left over? What am I going to do with them? How am I going to ship them back? Is it going to be worth it? Am I going to have to spend all of this money again to package it up and send it back home? So I think it's a combination of two things. I think you need to be smart with what your merchandise is, and at least consider an eco-friendly kind of route, or a nod, or something that's not going to cost necessarily the earth, but it's still going to be effective. As we've spoken about it a couple of times now, those Pokemon type cards for the animal charity, that, yes, there of course there's a budget to it, but it's not bank breaking it would to be to produce something on a massive scale for thousands and thousands of people. So I would say it can be really effective if it's done right and it works for your brand. Again, I'm going to use Devolver as an example of this, because again, just big Cult of Lamb fan. They were at God, anyone watching, don't come at me how I say this. WASD, however you say that event. Cult of Lamb, they partnered up with Loading Bar. It's a games focused bar, in the London, I think in Brighton areas, and they made these pint glasses with Cult of the Lamb, because in their new update there's a bar now in Cult of Lamb and you can make drinks and stuff like that. So that crossover was wicked because it was a nod to their newest bit of like sort of like content, but also like the cups people were just like tripping over themselves for, because you could only get them at WASD. So there was like an air of exclusivity on that merchandise, which made people want to come and get it. So that's another factor. I lied when I said 2, it's 3. The third point being, if you make it kind of like, oh, it's collectible and a bit juicy, sometimes that can make people go, yeah, I want a bit of that. So I'm all for merch if it's relevant and it's not something, basically. God, I'm hating on pens today, but I'm just not feeling pens right now.
No, I get that. And I suppose that there is some stuff that can be recycled. Like, I know I've been to Gamescom and seen how some of the stands have been reorganized for something smaller, like an EGX or something. So there is like efficiencies you can make there. But I get your point on not necessarily having something that's stuck in a box for a year that you don't pick out until the next event, like the next Gamescom, like 12 months down the line and everything. Where do you stand on those? Whether you, I don't know how you would lump them in, but I'm talking about, you see those stands that do like popcorn machines, or you do the stands that have like, food handouts, or even like competitions where you get like a really high quality bit of merch or product, but you have to sign up and guess how many jelly beans are in the jar or whatever it is. What's your thoughts on those?
That they have to be like, they have to have like the lowest amount of steps for that person to do. So if someone is asking me to sign up to something to get a free whatever, I want that to be as easy as possible. It's a one-click tap join. Like, there's nothing worse than having to go to a stand and be like, if you could just put in all of your details and we'll have all of your data, please. Oh, and can we please have your favorite color and your aunt twice removed? No, I haven't got time for that. No one's got time for that. So that's like a strong consideration. Not everyone's got time to stop and talk to you. Not everyone's got time to stop and sign up to your services. Can you be clever with it? Can people just take a picture of your QR code and walk on? Can people just like grab a leaflet and, as I say, walk on? It needs to hit, I think, 2 points. One person will want to stay and chat to you. Okay, cool. We've got some enamel pins here. Yeah, we can give those. That's something that we can give away. People on the fly, what have we got? We've got a really easy QR code. But on your point of like the ice cream and popcorn thing, there are rare cases where that does not work at events. It's going to speak for all of us here. I think clever uses of merch food related things like in areas can work really well if you've got like a big cluster or like a thematic cluster. Like let's say you've got like Epic or someone like that's got all their stands out in the open, and there's loads of sort of like different games going on and lots of people talking blah blah blah, and you've got this, how do you lure people into that? Well, firstly, it's great, there's loads of games, it's Epic, cool, I can get on board with that. But people are cheeky. If you've got popcorn, if you've got ice cream, people are going to come and get that ice cream and popcorn, whether they sign up to anything or not. That's what they want. People will be as fickle as that. So that's something that's really important, I think, to consider when you are creating merch, is that some people really like to collect it, some people just want to go in for the free stuff, for better for worse.
I think also when you say about popcorn, it's also the element of like, if you are in a game stand like Epic, where you might have queues for like the most popular upcoming games, it's like a way of you staying there. You'll stay until you finish your popcorn, and by that point you might be at the front and you might be able to play the game. So you've got that way.
Oh no, the machine's broken. You're going to have to wait for the popcorn to start back up again.
I've heard that line multiple times. I'm sure they pay them to actually say that so you can stay on the stand. I think it's a really interesting one though. It does come down to budget, but I think there's more than one way than just doing, like you said, just pens. Like, I think, like you said, it's they've been done so much now that I think people can sense when they're a bit overused. We've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to round off with one more question, which is, the one that I kind of think will become a staple of all of these freemium modes is basically like, what is the one bit of advice you'd give to anyone on this subject? Like, they come to you, they want to know what they should be doing when it comes to events in the games industry. What would be like your elevator bit of advice that you'd have on them?
Gonna get my what are they called? It's not a foghorn, whatever that thing is that you shout into, and say, book early, prepare early. That's like, if you're in a position where you're like, right, I want to do an event this year, just start it early. Like, my goodness, one of the most stressful things that anyone can do to themselves is to go into anything like 2 or 3 months before and have the time to produce what you need to produce. Book early, and also do your research, like on the event that you're going to. Is this event going to deliver what I need it to? Can I present my product, or can I network in a way that's going to be effective for my business, for my game, for whatever the case may be? I think choosing an event that's right for you and trying to attend, I don't want to say as many as possible, but if you have the opportunity to go to local events or like low cost events, just for research purposes or just networking and getting to know the people that are probably going to be in that industry for a very long time, start the process. Like, you know, it's only an investment in time and a ticket at that stage if you're just going to do the legwork. And you will meet some amazing people. And in that, you may also find that someone else could be exhibiting another event, and there's like a team up or collaboration potential. Like, you have no idea who you're going to meet. So I would, that two sort of takeaways there. I would say, spend more time at events, get to know people, get to know sort of like, you know, the layout. If you can also speak to sort of production companies or experiential companies about, like, you know, if you need some advice on direction, or like you're not sure what stands you look like, if it's really not part of your wheelhouse, ask people, ask for advice. What worked? Not everything has to be massive and expensive and glitzy, and no, isn't how it has to be. But it's the planning, the preparation, and the time that you allow yourself before these events. Just get in early, like for just so many reasons, like less stress being one of them. You know, time, money save. You know, you can change so much with what the stand is, but you can't necessarily change where you're going to be at that event or how big physically you're going to be at that event. So get in as early as you possibly can is like my headline takeaway on that bit of advice.
I think it's a really important one. And I think, you know, obviously for anyone listening to this that may be thinking to themselves, oh, well, I was wanting to do something at Gamescom this year. Like, obviously, I think there's still possibility. It's very, very tight. It's probably going to be incredibly stressful, if I'm not wrong. But, you know, I think it's also about approaching it, you know, doing it, you know, I'm guessing it's doing it the right way rather than trying to rush and get something that's half baked out just because you want to do it this year. Would that be what you'd think?
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back, I think, again to the first question, or like the first answer I gave you to the first question. You know, what are your intentions? What are you doing it for? Take a step back and look at, you know, why you're doing it. If there is a real need to rush something through, then there may be that reason. But just because everyone is doing it or everyone is going in a physical capacity doesn't mean that you have to. Like, there are people, you know, out there that can give you so many ideas or can offer you so many options that aren't just a static booth, screen, chair, done. Like, you know, there are other ways to make your presence known.
I think that's a brilliant way to end everything. So thank you so much for this. It's been really, really informative and insightful, and it's been great to talk to you about it all, because it's such an exciting part of the games industry, and it's one that is so valuable to the games industry as well. So it's so nice to be able to like unpick certain things about it all and talk about it at length. Thank you all as well for everyone who is watching, following us, and all that lovely stuff. If you do have any further questions, but you just weren't confident or didn't want to have that kind of shame of being the only one being called out on the chat, do message us directly. Amy and I are both on LinkedIn. We'll be tagged into this post, so by all means, like, drop us a connection and we can happily answer your questions offline, or you can contact us via the website and we can speak to you there as well. This has been our second live stream on Freemium Mode, and I think we're getting into a nice groove of it. So I think this will continue month on month. But if you are wanting to keep up to date, make sure to follow us on social media. We are on X, which you should know because people watching on X will be knowing this. We're also on TikTok. Their handles are the same, Big Games Machine. And also for the ones watching us on LinkedIn Live, we are on LinkedIn. Be sure to follow us all on there if you haven't done already. If you're wanting more than just this lovely stream that we have here and you want to see more of the amazing team at BGM, we've got you covered. We've got the Games PR podcast hosted by Jack and Tom, who talk about all types of advice, guidance, tips and tricks within the games PR and consumer world, and have some really, really interesting guests as well. If you're also wanting to know about the latest news and trends within the games industry, that's also something we can do. We've got a newsletter. If you go via our website, you can get it every single day, or if that's a bit too much, you can go via LinkedIn and get it every week, which is on a Friday. So make sure to look at those and sign up. We also do a lot more, a variety of things, less frequently, reports, data-led insights, trends analysis, blogs, and all those really interesting things. So do make sure. You will be really overwhelmed potentially on how much we can offer. But if you've got any questions, just drop us a line. We're happy to have a chat. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining. And yes, thank you everyone for listening. This has been Freemium Mode, and we look forward to catching you next time. And we'll be looking forward to updating you what that topic will be in due course. But for now, have a lovely rest of the week and speak soon. Take care.
Bye, everyone.